Before the Great Pyramids were even a thought, people in Jordan were already baking bread and sculpting monumental statues that would look right at home in a modern art gallery. This isn't just a travel destination, it's the original tech startup of the Levant. Today we're going from the salt-crusted shores of the Dead Sea to the liberal neon-lit streets of West Amman to see how 11.5 million people are balancing 2,000-year-old Bedouin traditions with a race toward a high-tech future. And trust me, you haven't seen the Middle East until you've seen it through the eyes of Jordan. Back in 2017, archaeologists found the oldest bread yet discovered at a site called Shubaika. It's over 14,000 years old. So next time you're enjoying a wrap, just remember the recipe basically started in the Jordanian desert. Okay. Now, as humans moved from hunting to farming during the Neolithic Agricultural Revolution, they settled in places like Ain Ghazal. This is where we found some of the world's earliest monumental sculptures, like those hauntingly beautiful plaster statues that prove people here actually existed. Then, by the time the Iron Age rolled around after 1200 BC, the region became a powerhouse of organised states. You had the three stable kingdoms of Ammon, Moab, and Edom, each with its own capitals and thriving cultures. These kingdoms were the original power players of the Levant, but their success meant they were constantly in the crosshairs of the world's first super empires, specifically Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Mediterranean. So for the next several centuries, Jordan became the ultimate prize. First came the Neo-Assyrians, then the Neo-Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, and then Cyrus the Great brought in the Persian Empire. When Alexander the Great entered the picture in 330 BC, he brought Greek culture with him, but his death triggered a messy breakup where his generals fought over Jordan for years. Amidst all this imperial drama, a group of clever Arabian nomads called the Nabateans saw an opening. The Nabateans mastered the art of finding hidden water in the desert, allowing them to control the incense routes connecting Yemen to the Mediterranean. They used their massive wealth to carve a city straight into pink sandstone cliffs. And yes, I'm talking about the legendary Petra. But eventually, the Roman general Pompey the Great annexed the region in 63 BC, turning it into a Roman province. This led to a golden age of paved roads and massive theatres before the empire split, leaving Jordan under the influence of the Byzantine Empire and the rise of Christianity. Everything shifted again in 636 AD at the Battle of Yarmouk, where Muslim armies decisively defeated the Byzantines. This brought Jordan into the Islamic fold, first under the Umayyad dynasty, who loved the Jordanian desert so much they built magnificent desert castles as elite retreats. Following them, the Abbasids took over and moved the capital to Baghdad, and eventually the Fatimids held sway until the arrival of the Crusaders. Then, for a brief window in the 12th century, Jordan was part of the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, but they were ultimately sent packing by the legendary leader Saladin after the Battle of Hattin in 1187. The centuries that followed were a whirlwind of Mamluk rule from Egypt, and even a brutal invasion by the Turco-Mongol leader Tamerlane. Finally, in 1516, the Ottomans conquered the region and incorporated it into their massive empire for the next 400 years. During this time, Jordan was essentially part of Greater Syria, and it wasn't until the chaos of World War I and the Great Arab Revolt of 1916 that the people of the region, led by Sharif Hussein bin Ali, rose up to seek independence from Ottoman rule. After the war, the British and French partitioned the Middle East, and in 1921, the Emirate of Transjordan was established with Abdullah I as the leader. While it started as a British protectorate, Jordan finally gained its full independence as a sovereign kingdom in 1946. However, the newborn nation was immediately tested by the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, which saw thousands of Palestinian refugees flee to Jordan and the West Bank. This period was incredibly volatile, even leading to the assassination of King Abdullah I in 1951. His grandson King Hussein took the throne at just 17 years old and navigated Jordan through decades of regional turmoil, including the Six-Day War in 1967 and the internal Black September conflict. But despite being in the eye of the storm, Hussein was a master of diplomacy, eventually signing a peace treaty with Israel in 1994. When he passed away in 1999, his son King Abdullah II took over. Today, Jordan remains a fascinating sanctuary, a country that has opened its doors to millions of refugees from Iraq and Syria, proving that even in a region of conflict, there is a deep historical tradition of hospitality and stability. But how does this tiny, landlocked country actually manage its resources and stay afloat today? Jordan is a relatively small country, sitting right at the junction of the Levantine and Arabian areas of the Middle East, roughly 89,342 square kilometres, or about 34,495 square miles. It's bordered by Syria to the north, Iraq to the east, Saudi Arabia to the south and east, and Israel and the occupied West Bank to the west. While most of the country is landlocked, Jordan has one tiny, precious window to the sea at its southern tip. This is the Gulf of Aqaba. Now, if we zoom in on the terrain, the most jaw-dropping feature has to be the Jordan Valley, which is part of the Great Rift Valley, a massive geological fissure created 20 million years ago by shifting tectonic plates. At the heart of this valley is the Jordan River, which flows down into the Dead Sea. Everyone's heard of the Dead Sea, but do you know why it's so famous? Because at 407 metres, or about 1,335 feet below sea level, it's officially the lowest point on the face of the Earth. It's also a hypersaline lake, meaning it's about 8 times saltier than the ocean, so you literally cannot sink. You just bob on the surface like a cork. And since it's so saturated with minerals, no plants or animals can live in it, which is how it earned its dead title. But humans have been visiting for millennia to soak in its therapeutic waters. As you move south from the Dead Sea, the valley turns into the Wadi Araba. The mountains here are barren and jagged, but they are a goldmine for potash mining. Eventually, this path leads you to Aqaba, Jordan's only port city. It's got a coastline that is basically a diver's paradise, home to some of the most vibrant coral reefs in the world. It's a total shift from the harsh desert, offering a tropical gateway to the Red Sea. Now, if you head east from the valley, the land rises sharply into the Mountain Heights Plateau. This is the green part of Jordan, receiving the highest rainfall and hosting the biggest cities, like Amman, Zarqa, and Irbid. This region is intersected by deep valleys called wadis, which are watercourse valleys that can turn into rushing rivers after a big rain. But here's the thing, about 75% of Jordan is actually the Badia, or the Eastern Desert. This is a vast expanse of limestone plateaus and volcanic basalt fields that look like something out of a sci-fi movie. Within this desert, you'll find the Azraq Oasis and the famous Rum Desert. If you've ever seen photos of towering sandstone mesas and deep red sand, that's Wadi Rum. It's one of the most fantastic desert landscapes in the world and has been the backdrop for countless Martian movies. So you've got the lowest point on Earth, lush mountain plateaus, and alien-looking red deserts, all packed into a country the size of a European nation. It's a geography of extremes, and honestly, it's those very extremes that have dictated how Jordanians have lived, farmed, and built their world for thousands of years. Which brings us here. Jordan is basically the quiet kid in a loud neighbourhood, and its resilience is pretty impressive. Despite being surrounded by conflicts, it's managed to keep its head above water through some really smart and sometimes tough macroeconomic moves. To understand the scale, Jordan's GDP for 2025 is projected to hit about $56 billion. That's a steady climb from around $53.4 billion in 2024. While the world economy has been a roller coaster, Jordan's growth rate sat at about 2.7% in early 2025, which is actually its strongest performance in a couple of years. Now, while this looks promising, Jordan still has a lot of debt. And this is where things get a bit technical. Imagine you have a credit card balance that's almost as big as your annual salary. That's kind of where Jordan is. Public debt hit nearly 90% of its GDP by the end of 2023, and it hovered around 91.7% in 2024. The goal is to trim that down to 80% by 2028, which is a massive task. To do that, the government has been on a serious diet, cutting its primary deficit from 5.7% of GDP back in 2020 down to just 2.7% by 2023. They're essentially trying to spend only what they earn, but it's hard when you are also providing for millions of refugees, specifically from Syria and Palestine, which puts a huge strain on schools, hospitals, water and the job market. Speaking of jobs, this is Jordan's biggest hurdle. The unemployment rate is a tough pill to swallow, sitting at about 21.4% for Jordanian citizens. But it doesn't hit everyone equally, meaning if you're a woman in Jordan, the unemployment rate jumps to a staggering 33.9%, even though female literacy is nearly 98% and women make up over half of the university graduates. It's a bit of a paradox, a huge educated workforce that isn't fully plugged into the economy yet. But it's not all red ink and uphill battles. There are some serious bright spots, especially in tourism. Tourism is basically Jordan's MVP right now. By late 2025, tourism revenue soared to over $7 billion. We saw an 18% surge in visitor numbers in the first half of 2025 alone, with people flocking to Petra and Wadi Rum. On top of that, Jordanians living abroad sent back about $3.7 billion in remittances, which is a huge lifeline for many families. Looking forward, the government is betting big on something called the Economic Modernization Vision. They're planning to pour over $10 billion into massive mega projects like the National Water Carrier, because Jordan is one of the driest countries on earth, a new railway connecting Aqaba to the inland, and major upgrades to the gas pipeline. It's a go big or go home strategy aimed at creating a more sustainable future. But before that, let's look at the present. First thing you need to understand about Jordan culture, built on the intersection of 3 continents. It is a blend of ancient Arabic traditions and a very modern, forward-thinking spirit. And you'll feel that spirit the second you step off the plane. Jordanians are famous for being some of the most hospitable people on earth. You'll hear the phrase ahlan wa sahlan, meaning, I welcome you, constantly. It's not just a polite greeting, it's a way of life. Now, when we look at who makes up Jordan today, it's a fascinating mix. As of 2025, the population has grown to about 11.5 million people. While the vast majority are Sunni Muslims, there is a deep-rooted Christian community that makes up about 2% to 3% of the population. So you'll see churches and mosques standing side by side, especially in the capital, Amman. Speaking of the capital, more than 40% of the country lives in this metropolis, and it's a city of 2 halves. The eastern side is more traditional and historic, but if you head to West Amman, it feels like any global capital, complete with malls, high-end hotels, and a nightlife scene that's arguably the most liberal in the region. While you're there, you'll hear a mix of Jordanian Arabic and perfect English, especially among the younger generation. And keep in mind, 50% of Jordanians are under the age of 24. Beyond that, this younger generation is also redefining what it means to be a woman in Jordan. Today, the literacy rate for women is an incredible 92%, and women actually outnumber men in universities. You'll find them leading in business, medicine, and politics. In fact, women now hold about 20% of the seats in parliament. While social norms can still be traditional, especially in rural areas where you might see men and women socialising in separate spaces, the shift toward equality in the cities is massive. And we can't talk about culture without talking about the food and the festivals. Jordanian cuisine is a delicious greatest hits of the Levant. Think hummus, falafel, and the national dish, mansaf, lamb cooked in fermented yogurt. If you're there in July, you've got to check out the Jerash festival. It's this massive cultural explosion held in an ancient Roman city, featuring over 235 different activities, from Bedouin dabki, a rhythmic foot-pounding dance, to modern Arab pop stars. At the end of the day, Jordan is a place that honours its past while racing toward a very global future. So, if you had to choose one, would you spend a week diving the coral reefs of the Red Sea in Aqaba? Or navigating the liberal, high-energy nightlife of West Amman? I honestly can't decide, so let me know which one you'd choose in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this next one.